Dave Thomas again. Today I am building the Quick Q model rocket from Quest by Aerotech. And in case you're kind of unfamiliar with what's going on with Aerotech brands, their low power rockets are under the Quest brand, their mid power rockets are under the Enerjet brand, and then their high power stuff is still Aerotech. Okay, so sometimes you'll see these under slightly different names depending on where they got shuffled to. Now, for the past month or so, I've been building a bunch of easy-to-assemble Estes kits. Quest has the equivalent types of kits here, and so this is very similar in that it's all the parts are pre-colored, the decals are self-adhesive and everything, and generally you can put these together in less than an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up and we will get started. First of all, we want to find our instructions here. Okay, now there's stuff inside the instructions, so be careful when you pull this out. Alright, so let's go through the list here. We have a parachute kit. Now, unlike Estes, you actually have to put together your own parachute with most of the Quest models here. So this has some reinforcing tabs, the parachute sheet itself, and then shroud line material. Okay, we have two shock cords. One is made of Kevlar, the other one is tubular elastic here, and those will be put together as we get to that point. Alright, we have some decals here. Alright, this is kind of unusual. Alright, so we have to cut out this one. These ones are made just to peel off. It looks like both are self-stick though. Alright, we had a fin stuck in the instructions. We should have more of those here. They're kind of mixed together in the bottom of the bag. Alright, we have a yellow body tube and a purple body tube. Nose cone is stuck in there, purple nose cone. Alright, we have our motor mount and fin can. Actually, the motor mount will go inside that. Here we've got two more fins. And then finally, as we pull this stuff out, alright, this is the actual motor mount tube that will go inside there. We have a coupler for the two body tubes. We have our motor retainer, and then this is a little retaining clip that will go on the fin can. Alright, so if I move that out of the way for a moment, it looks like we have everything. Okay, so I'm going to clear most of this away and we will get started. Our first task is to assemble the shock cord and then put that on the mount. So what we'll do here is we've got the elastic and the Kevlar here. We're going to line those together. And we're going to tie an overhand knot that leaves about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters on the free ends here. Okay, so I'm just going to pull those tight. Alright, it feels kind of weird because one of them is elastic. Okay, now to help keep that in place, I'm going to add just a little dab of white glue, or you can use wood glue. I'm using white wood glue actually. Okay, do not use any type of plastic or super glue cements on here because they will melt the elastic. Alright, but that'll just keep that knot in place. Alright, now we're going to take the yellow Kevlar cord here. That's going to go through. Make sure I've got this all together. Yep, okay. So we're going to pass this through the little loop there. Now you can do it from the other side as well. Actually what I'm going to do is make a folded J here. There we go. So you're going to pull that up, and then you're going to tie a double knot, or 2 half hitches. And try to keep the free end to a minimum, but not so close to the knot that it doesn't, or that it will slide out. We don't want that. Okay, so that's going like that. Alright, and then we can pull this tight. Now here, it's a good idea to use a little bit of just regular super glue, and we're going to put that directly on the knot there. We're not trying to glue it to the plastic. The thing about Kevlar is it doesn't hold knots very well, as it's really smooth and slippery. So by putting a little bit of super glue on there, that'll keep that knot in place. Okay, I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. We will come back to it. Next we need the coupler and the 2 body tubes here. And we need the center of the coupler. So I'm just going to do a quick measurement here. That is roughly 3 centimeters. So at 1.5 centimeters here, I'm just going to make a pencil mark. Alright, and here, and we've got some fraying of the color there. I think I'm going to put that up at the top. So this will be the, let's see here, purple goes on the aft end. So this is going to go like this, and then the motor mount fin can will go in like that. Alright. So now I'm just going to do a dry fit and make sure this goes together okay. Yep, and it will. Alright, if that's fitting fine, then take your white glue or wood glue and run a bead of glue just inside the tube. You want a nice continuous bead here, but nothing so thick that it takes forever to dry. Alright, and I'm going to put my coupler in there to the halfway point. There we go. Alright, and I can feel the glue trying to grab already, but it's a little bit loose in there. So I'm going to let this dry for about 5 minutes before I try and put it in here. Otherwise I may end up just shoving it further down the yellow tube, and we don't want that. While I'm waiting for the glue to dry on that coupler, I'm going to go ahead and come back to the fin can here. Alright, and so step 3 we're going to skip down to for just a little bit. Alright, so we've got on our motor mount tube, one end has 2 slots cut into it, and that goes onto this little peg that rises up here. So if we do this kind of end on, okay, that slips in like that, and then the other half will attach in the same way. Line up the pegs with the little holes. Alright, and we'll have this, and then there's a retaining ring that will go on here in just a bit. Alright, so making sure that all fits, we'll go ahead and take this apart once more. Alright, I'll go ahead and put my motor mount tube back in there, and now they show using a tube type plastic cement like this. You can also use a medium viscosity brush on cement like this one here. Whichever you prefer. I just like the control that I get with this. Right, but we're going to cement all the little pegs coming up and any articulating surfaces here, which would include these. Alright, but not in here. This is where the fins are going to go in. Alright, so we'll have more down here and right there. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and put the other half back on. Now you'll notice here the other half has the integral launch lug right here. Okay, now I'm going to hold this for about 30 seconds and then set it aside to completely dry. If you have some small clamps, you can use those to help hold this together. Alright, so I've got this one here. I'm just going to clamp it like that. and that'll hold it together while it's drying. So I'm going to set this aside for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to it after we've put the body tubes together. The glue on my coupler here has dried enough that it's not moving anymore. So now I'm going to take and do the purple tube in the same way. Alright, so again we want a nice even bead of glue just inside the edge. Okay, and then that's going to go on here. Again, rotate it back and forth a little bit for that glue to set. If you want, you can line up the spirals there. It's kind of OCD. I just do it because it's fun. Alright, and we're going to let this dry for another 5 minutes or so. The glue on the body tube coupler is dry, as is the glue on the motor mount and fin assembly here. So next, this shows us feeding the shock cord up through the body tube. The problem is if you do it this way, there's a good chance you're going to get it in the glue. So what I'm going to suggest to do otherwise, this is something you see done a lot on mid and high power rockets, is we're going to stuff the shock cord down through the motor mount here. Alright, and then that will glue in here, and then once that glue is set, we'll go ahead and put, we'll take the shock cord and put it up through the tube where it's supposed to be. Okay, now this is going to have us gluing the fins on after we put the fin can in. They're using the tube type plastic cement. I prefer to use gel type super glue whenever I'm doing plastic to paper or cardboard like this. If you're used to working with it, you could even use epoxy. The drawback to epoxy is it's heavier, but it's not a big deal in this small amount here. Another optional step you can do is take some sandpaper, or I'm using an emery file here, and just roughen up the surface a little bit of where this is going to go into our body tube. And it just gives us a little bit more surface area for the glue to adhere to. Okay, so whichever glue you decide to use, just don't use white glue or wood glue as it won't stick. Alright, so we're going to run an even bead inside the purple end of the body tube assembly here. About out here. I think that tube just gave up the ghost. Just enough. Okay, so here I'm just going to slide this in. I'm going to move it back and forth a couple of times just to seat the glue well. And now we're going to let this dry once more. While we're waiting for glue to dry once more, we are going to go ahead and come down here and we're going to assemble the parachute. Alright, so the first thing is just spread this out, and then using either scissors or a hobby knife, cut this out along the dotted lines. Alright, next we're going to take these reinforcements here, peel those off, and we want to leave the center piece behind there. We don't want it. So just kind of pull that off. You can put it back on somewhere. I'm going to leave it on my finger at the moment. Alright, and we're going to place these on the appropriate spots, sticky side down, around the parachute, just like that. we go. And if for some reason you lose one of these or you need to replace it, you can use notebook paper reinforcements that are meant to reinforce the holes on notebook paper. That works pretty good with this as well. Next, we're going to poke through the plastic here, and I recommend using a pencil or a pen tip. Don't use a hobby knife because it's too easy to slice into the reinforcement that way. So I'm just going to poke a hole through each one of these. There we go. And now we're going to take the shroud line material here, and it looks like this is pre-cut to length. So we should have 3 of them. Alright, so I'm going to start by peeling one off of there, and then we're going to tie this between 2 corners. And you just pick whichever 2 you want to start with here. And then you're going to tie this on with 2 half hitches or a double knot. And the idea here is to try and use the same amount of shroud material for each knot. And that will keep this fairly close to being even. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other 2 shroud lines and just keep moving along corners. Once you have all the shroud lines on, according to the instructions, we tie this to the nose cone. Okay, now if you've seen my other videos, you know I don't like to do this, but I'll show you both ways. The other way is to use a snap swivel. So first, loop all of the shroud lines over one finger of your dominant hand. With your other hand, grab the middle of the parachute sheet. And now you're going to adjust here the relative lengths of the shroud lines and just where the center of your parachute is so that all of the corners line up like that. Now, if you're going to use their method, then gather the shroud lines together into a small nubbin like that and pass those through the eyelet of the nose cone. Okay. Now I'm trying to keep the lines taut here with my other hand so that the relative length doesn't change. Alright, now here you can either pass the nose cone through the loop and pull that tight, which is the way, if you're going to do it, I recommend doing it that way. Or you can take all the parachute here and push that through and pull it tight. Either way, it's going to cinch down onto the nose cone eyelet there. Okay. Now if you're going to do that, once you get it cinched down where you want it, go ahead and put just a little dab of white glue or wood glue on the knot so it doesn't move. Now I'm going to use a snap swivel, so I'm going to check and make sure my shroud lines haven't moved there. That looks good. Now these snap swivels you can buy just about any place that has fishing supplies. And what we've got here is a removable catch here that will allow us to attach this to the nose cone. That's the snap part. Alright, the swivel part's over here, and ideally these 2 pieces are independent of each other and it allows them to spin freely. In practice, there's no little ball bearing in there, so we'd like to think it's helping to keep from tangling the shroud lines, but it doesn't do much. Mostly what this does is allow us to change parachutes quickly. Alright, so take the swivel end here, pass your shroud line loops through that. Alright, and I'm still keeping tension back here so my relative length doesn't change. Now, through the loops, I'm going to put the entire snap swivel up. I'm going to pull the loops down at the same time. And then I'm just going to pull this tight, and we get a nice knot there. Alright, one more check to make sure that my shroud lines are where I want them to be, and they are. And so here now, I'm going to add a little dab of white or wood glue to that knot, just so it doesn't come undone and change the length of my shroud lines. Okay, this just needs to dry for a few minutes, and then we can attach it to the nose cone, and we'll do that a little bit later on in the build. The glue on my fin can has dried, so now I'm going to go ahead and put the shock cord back up through it, so it can be where it's supposed to be there. And once it comes out the other end, we can just pull that through. Okay, and the knot should clear the body tube by a considerable distance. Now, one thing I'm going to do here is, the problem with Kevlar is that it's really strong and it's very flame retardant, but it's also kind of abrasive. And so if we get an instance where the body tube's kind of pointed this way and the parachute's coming back this way, it'll actually cut into this, causing what's called a zipper. And you can help avoid that by just putting a little bit of kind of a shock absorber or a bumper on that, kind of like a boat bumper. Right, so what I'm going to do is just take a piece of masking tape here, and I'm going to put that kind of like a sandwich here. Alright, the trick is getting the sandwich exactly where you need it to be. So about 1/4 distance from one edge. And then we're just going to fold that whole thing over like this. And before I get it squished too much, I'm now going to move it down so that now when it hits, it's distributing that pressure along a greater surface area there. Okay. The main trick with this is to make sure you get this down well into the body tube before you put the parachute in, so the parachute shroud lines don't accidentally get hung up on that. Alright, that's optional, but it's a quick thing to do that hopefully help prevent you zippering your tube there. Alright, come back to our fin can. They're having us glue these on one at a time. And so first thing I'm going to do is just do a test fit here. Alright, and it looks like these can go on in either direction. So you just put them into the little channels there and push forward, and that's really, really tight. Okay. If you put glue on these, it's going to get even tighter. So I'm going to show you a different method of gluing the fins on here. That one's not too bad. This one's going to be really bad. Okay, so what you can do is take a file, or again, I'm going to use an emery board here, and just if it's tight, start by filing the mount here itself, especially the narrow channels there. Alright, so that should move pretty freely. And I'm going to do this all the way around now. So I'm going to go ahead and put the fins on. That one's a good one. Alright, this one here, a little tight. Alright, so the same way, I'm just going to do a little bit of filing there. Alright, you want to make sure that these are moving freely regardless of how you glue them. So the next thing I can do is just kind of file along the edge a little bit here. This is easier if you have a true file. sticky, but for what I'm going to do, that's okay. Alright. Now also keep in mind that 2 of these slots are actually seams there. So if you put this in and your fin can starts to come apart, take it back out immediately. And re-glue that fin can and let it dry longer. Okay. And then this little ring goes on like this. And it should turn here. There we go. It turns counterclockwise. Alright, and if it's in the right position, these little raised areas will be right next to the fins. Alright, so like I said, they actually do this by gluing each fin first and then sliding it in. And if you have any kind of tightness like I had here, make sure you file that down well. What I'm going to do instead though is use this low viscosity plastic cement, and I'm just going to paint this into the seams here. And then it'll kind of run down into the seam and glue it in from there. If you happen to get some like up on a fin or over to the side, don't worry about it. Just let it dry instead of trying to wipe it away. Because if you try and wipe it away, it will smear and look awful. But if you just let it dry, it's not very noticeable. Alright, now the instructions don't show gluing on this little retainer spot here. You can if you like. You can also do exactly what I did with the fins and just take this really low viscosity cement and run it along the seam. Alright, I'm going to set this aside to dry for a few minutes and then we'll start putting everything together. While the glue on the fins is drying on the other end, we'll go ahead and put the shock cord onto the nose cone here. Now if you did the direct tie-on of the parachute, that's already going to be attached. If you did the snap swivel, you may or may not have attached it already. You can go ahead and just take it off for a while to make this easier. We're just going to tie a double knot or 2 half hitches here. Alright, we're going to pull that from all directions. And then I'm going to cut that free end back to about 5 or 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch. And mainly that's to keep it from getting caught between the shoulder and the body tube there. Like we did with the shroud lines, we'll go ahead and put just a little dab of glue on this. White or wood glue, not plastic cement or super glue. Again, those could melt the elastic there. Alright, and we'll let that dry for a few minutes as well. All of our glue has had time to dry, so now we'll just put everything together. So the engine retainer here just pokes in the back and you give that a half turn and that will hold the motor in place there. Back up on the other end, we need to attach the parachute if you've not already done so. So this will just come in here next to the shock cord. Now if you're actually prepping this for flight, you'll want to put probably 4 pieces of lightly crumpled recovery wadding down in here, or the equivalent of other protectants like dog barf, which is blown cellulose. Okay, whatever you're using, go ahead and stick that in first. If you're just putting this away and you want to keep it all together, you don't need to worry about that. Now, some Rocketeers don't like to keep parachutes in their rockets in storage, which is why snap swivels are so handy. All right, now, if you ask any 10 Rocketeers how to fold a parachute, you'll get 10 answers. I'm going to show you my current favorite method. All right, so first we're going to fold this in half so that each corner tab here overlaps another. All right, so we've got 2 corners there, 2 corners there, and 2 corners up here. All right, then we're going to take one of those, get that all the way folded out. All right, so take a side corner set here. We're going to fold that over and put it on top of the middle set. Smooth that down. Do the same thing with the other side. Okay, so now we've got kind of a starship looking thing here. All right, now we're going to take our shroud lines and find approximately the midpoint. All right, we're going to fold those up inside. If you've got a snap swivel, leave it right here at the edge. If you don't, leave yourself about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters of shroud lines there. Then we're going to fold one edge over into the middle, covering the shroud lines. And then do the same on the other side, so that now we've got kind of a wedge going here. Take the tip of your wedge, fold that down over on top of all the corners there, and then fold the sides inward, kind of roll it there, and we get kind of a cylinder going. All right, go ahead and stuff the shock cords down inside there. You don't have to do it in any particular way, just get them in. All right, and then we're going to slide the parachute down. Now this should go really easily. If you're having trouble pushing that in, something's catching. Pull it out and try again. All right, and then making sure that we don't get the snap swivel or shroud lines or shock cord caught between the shoulder and the inside of the body tube. We're just going to put that in there. Now that feels loose. Do a shake test, so turn your rocket upside down and give it a shake. All right, if that happens, you need some more friction in there. The easiest way to do this is to add some masking tape to the shoulder. All right, we're not taping it to the body tube, we're just increasing the thickness here. And mine's really loose, so I'm going to use close to a hole circumference here. Add just a little bit more. And by doing this with masking tape, you can change it as needed. So depending on the temperature and humidity and such, the relative diameters of the shoulder and the body tube can change. So you want to check this at every launch. All right, now we're going to put everything back in there again. Okay, now that's feeling too tight, so I'm going to back that off. You want this just tight enough that it won't shake loose, but not so tight that it won't come out relatively easily. You should be able to pull it out with just a little bit of effort. So I'm going to back this off to about half a circumference. Okay, stuff everything back in there where it's supposed to be. There we go. Now if I shake it, it's not coming out, but it pops out readily when I just give it a little bit of tension. Okay, our last thing to do is add the decals, and before I do that, I'm going to go wash my hands thoroughly to help minimize fingerprints and things like that. Now we can use the packaging illustration as a guide, but it's not required. This rocket will fly just fine without any decals on it, so really the decal step is optional. You can use the layout that they show here, or you can do your own, doesn't matter a whole lot. Now I'm going to start with this roll pattern here, and it's meant to go across this seam. Now, the problem with these types of decals when you're using them on the pre-colored rockets like this is if you misplace it and you didn't get it exactly straight, it's really hard to peel it back up without peeling up the paper with the color on it. So we want to try and get this as close as we can the first time. Alright, so I like to start with my edge on the launch lug side so that when it's on the launch pad it's harder to see mistakes. Okay, now I'm going to line that up so that the change in pattern here is going to go around the seam. Okay, that looks fairly straight. Now I'm going to go ahead and push down this edge. Alright, it's already where I don't want it. There's a little bubble there, okay, so I don't want bubbles if I can help it. So now I'm going to keep tension on this as I wrap it, and I can change its direction a little bit. I can't do a lot without repositioning it, but so far I'm doing fairly well at keeping the seam where it's supposed to be. Now it's going to come off a little bit, but not by very much. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and press everything down and get all the bubbles out. This feels like it's got really good strong adhesive in it too. What I've noticed is some self-stick decals as they age they start peeling up. And sometimes you can put them back down with super glue and sometimes they just don't go at all. Okay, so it didn't quite reach the wraparound point, but there's nothing to be done about that. Okay, then we've got the two Q's here, and it looks like those are supposed to go on the yellow fin. Alright, and then we've got the quick Q ones, and these are supposed to go, looks like on either side here, or wherever you want them for that matter. Okay, but these ones we're going to need to cut out just inside the dashed lines there. Okay, so I'm going to put one about here. There we go. I might need to use your hobby knife to get under that paper. Oh, there's a split. I was looking for to begin with. Okay, so we're going to put this right about here. Not sure why they change material on us like this. Alright, and then the other one I'm going to put opposite that. Now, this one does have a nice clear split line on it. Try and get it in about the same place. Alright, so there's my quick cue from nose to tail there. This went together in about an hour, counting all the dry time and such. I would recommend giving it another 15 minutes to half an hour just to let everything get good and dry before you stick this on the launch pad. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.